WordPress has the freedom to allow for you to make a lot of great decisions and also a lot of bad decisions.
All that stuff was just us, figuring it out as we went along.
I always tell clients to stop and ask yourself, is that really what you want to do?
We established some good relationships and we had a lot of fun. But there was some crazy stuff happening back then. I remember people were getting like tattoos on dares. We were going to parties. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, where we seek to uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. I am your host, Jesse Friedman, and with me today is Joe Hall from Hall Analysis. Joe is actually an old friend of mine as well. He and I met, it's closing in on 20 years ago. Back when I used to do SEO for an advertising firm. Joe was, you were so helpful in getting me started. Just like in the WordPress community, I met so many folks who helped me get started in the WordPress community. Joe, you were instrumental in guiding a lot of people, I think, in some of the beginnings of what SEO took shape into. And so that was back in the early 2000s. And I thought it would be great to have you on the show here because you have an expertise in doing this for, decades now. And I think it would be a really unique perspective to see what it is that you think about when you start to look at hosting companies and evaluating that for your customers. So before we dive in, why don't you take a minute, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're working on, where you're from, all that.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you said, it was so many years ago that we met. And this morning I was actually thinking about this call, preparing for this recording, and I was thinking about how much of a pleasure it is to know people over the course of your career, and to watch them kind of take on new roles and grow in their career. It's just been a pleasure knowing you for so long, seeing you go from this role to that role, and now what you're doing now is just so impressive. But anyways, so
Thanks, Joe.
my name is Joe Hall. I'm an SEO consultant. I started building things on the internet back in 1997, and haven't really stopped ever since then. I am a technical SEO, so I think of myself as more of like a web developer that does SEO. I still build websites, but primarily my main kind of thing is technical SEO. And so that's what I mostly focus on. And you can read more about that or check out what I do in that regard at hallanalysis.com. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining. You and I haven't had a chance to catch up recently, but for years, you and I bounced around ideas and talked about the craft of SEO. I remember you and I met, I think we met at a conference. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was back in like 2006 or 2007. Chris from, what was the name of that business?
Blue Glass?
Maybe that was it. Yeah. And then I remember Ray Drysdale,
Uh-huh.
Pam Lund, that whole crew. We were all it was like a small group of SEOers who were really starting to come up in their career and really starting to make a name for ourselves. And at the same time, trying to really figure out what it is that SEO needs to do to grow as a business in that industry.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember back then, I was working at an advertising firm that was helping car dealerships to start to rank better, and we were doing SEO and SEM, and then also just straight up flash ads back then.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we need to do is try to teach car dealers how to actually rank. And that's not an easy thing to do. These guys aren't super technical, nor are they writing a lot of content.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to this conference, and it was such a welcoming group of people, yourself included, and then we created like a small little, I think, gang
community
of ourselves, just kind of trying to, just trying to pull it all together and figure it out. And then so as my career changed, I went out of SEO.
I think that was in, was that conference in Boca Raton?
Yeah, it was either it was definitely Florida. I remember it being like Fort Lauderdale or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do remember that, and that really was a great community of people, and that time period was pivotal, I think, for uh, the SEO industry because it was when SEO was moving from a cottage industry into like an actual component of uh, digital marketing. And so much of digital marketing back then was not really well defined, um, because nobody really knew, you know, what it was or how it should operate inside a company. And so then I think a lot of us that were doing SEO and in web publishing, really, we were all kind of trying to find our place within this professional services area, and how do we fit ourselves into uh, the marketing kind of paradigm. A lot has changed since then, but it was a really interesting time because it attracted, and I'm sure you remember this, it attracted a lot of very unique characters to the
Oh
to,
yeah.
to the industry, and some of them have went on to become uh, huge names, and some of them have kind of just disappeared. Uh, but it has been, like I was saying earlier, really just rewarding to be a part of that and then watch what has happened afterwards. Um, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. You know,
Oh, for sure. I
yeah,
mean, we went from being a bunch of kid, quote unquote, on party buses at conferences, learning
yes,
how to do all this stuff because there wasn't a playbook. There
yeah,
weren't massive Google conferences where they were bringing big names together to teach you how to do these things. We were really kind of hacking the internet in a sense to try and figure out what it is that Google responds to. How is it that this content gets ranked? How does it get crawled? All that stuff was just us, figuring it out as we went along. And when we get to these conferences, we had, it was a great opportunity to learn from each other. And it wasn't set protocols or predefined curriculums or standards that we had to follow at that time. It was really, this is what I learned this year, doing this and figuring this out and everything else. And so we established some good relationships and we had a lot of fun. But there was some crazy stuff happening back then. I remember people were getting like tattoos on dares. We
yeah,
were going to parties.
yes.
It was
It
like
was it
it
was
was
it was
a rock star group of
it
people.
was a little weird to start your career. For me, at least, it was weird to start my career in that regard because now I go to like professional events or I go somewhere where I'm surrounded by like CMOs or investment people. I mean, I run into somebody that that I literally like saw throw furniture into a pool one night.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
it's like I'm trying to be professional here, but I remember that dude back like 15 years ago when we were
Yep.
kind of a little crazy. But so yeah, I mean I think that's kind of an interesting component of this whole thing. But like I said, it's just a real pleasure to watch that whole how everything's kind of come together and mature and you know, um, us develop kind of careers and everybody get a little wiser and understand kind of what place they fill in the best way they can, now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think over time our industry solidified. The ground underneath us
Uh-huh.
stopped moving so much, and we kind of knew how to start building a business on top of these things. We knew how to sign clients. Things got a lot more professional, and then we all started kind of going off and doing different things. You stuck in this world. You've been in it for a couple decades now. I kind of shifted out of SEO and I went into a variety of different areas. I got into web security and then user experience, marketing. Got acquired by Automatic. I've been working with hosting companies. The list goes on, and so my trajectory has kind of been all over. But that leaves me to wonder like what has changed in the world of SEO. It's so funny because we talk about even just trying to get more traffic on like this podcast website or on WP Cloud or things like that. And I'm trying to draw on these old bits of information I had around SEO from the early 2000s, and I have to remind myself that that's so outdated. It's over a decade old at this point. So I'm curious, like when you start to take on an SEO project, what are the first things you're looking for? And feel free to answer that in any way, but also maybe think about like that through the lens of like in a hosting company or like a customer who's on a specific host. Are there things that you're looking for that are like immediate, we need to fix this? Or are there things that you're like, oh, you're on this host, that's a good start,
Yeah.
you're at least in the right place.
Well, I think that WordPress itself is a good start. Some hosting companies are better than others. We'll get to that in a second. But just start off with WordPress itself. I think WordPress itself is a really good start for SEO. Back when when I first met you, we would joke around about how the engineers at Google chose WordPress over Blogger. Um, and we would kind of say, "Oh well, like that's kind of weird. Like Blogger is, Google's blogging platform. Why are all the engineers running their personal sites on WordPress installs?" But really, behind the scenes, they never really said this publicly, but behind the scenes, many of them just kind of admitted that WordPress's handling of URLs, um, especially in regards to what's called canonicalization, out the gate is just perfect for SEO. A lot of the other, I guess, uh, CMSs out there that WordPress considers its competitors or that people match up WordPress against, uh, they have kind of followed WordPress's lead to a great extent. If they are doing things right for SEO, it's because WordPress did it right first. Um, and if they're doing something wrong with SEO, then it's likely that WordPress is doing it correctly or that everybody is doing it wrong. So I think that WordPress in itself is a great choice for SEO for a lot of reasons. Um, but I also tell clients all the time that WordPress is what you make of it, right? So you can go wrong with WordPress. Uh, you can choose bad WordPress themes. You can overload the site with too many plugins. All those things can be detrimental to SEO. From its core, just coming right out the gate, WordPress I feel like is better than most other comparable CMSs on the market. Um, Now, as far as like hosting is concerned,
So they're already off to a good start if they're using WordPress then.
yeah,
And this is a common theme that we actually see in this podcast too, is like we talk about performance and we talk about security as well, which actually tangentially or not so tangentially correlate to SEO and its performance there. But those things out of the gate with WordPress, vanilla WordPress are quite good, right? Security is quite good, performance is quite good, and then it's when you start to add on and extend WordPress that you can go down a road that's quite good and it's optimized and you're doing a good job of it. But it can also lead you down a path where you end up in deep in the woods and not knowing what you're doing and creating a lot of headache for yourself.
yeah. So WordPress has the freedom to allow for you to make a lot of great decisions and also a lot of bad decisions, right? That's the way I look at WordPress, and that's why I think WordPress really is kind of it really does embrace the ethos of open source. Not only the letter of license, but the spirit of open source and allowing you to make choices. And some of those choices can be bad. Some of them can be really good. But that ability to allow you to make the right choices, I think, also really helps with your SEO. You know. Um,
Yeah, for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah.
So does that? So what do you only work with clients who are on WordPress, or if a customer comes to you and they need SEO help and they're
No,
not
I
on
mean
WordPress,
it would.
do you take on the client? Do you try to push them to
Yeah,
WordPress?
no, I work with anybody. I mean, if I and that's the thing is like if I said that I would only work with WordPress clients, I probably wouldn't uh, have any clients because most of I mean it's true because most of my clients come to me if they're having a problem. I do have a lot of WordPress clients, and sometimes they do come to me with issues, but rarely are those issues ever anything like uh, regarding like an SEO technical problem. It's usually that they want to get an audit, a general audit done, or something like that. But no, I mean like the biggest SEO problems I see are clients that are not using WordPress, and it's usually just because they have like a homegrown CMS that they've built internally that they've just not implemented SEO best practices very well, or that they've kind of not understood how to correctly do something, that kind of thing. Um,
People are still growing their own CMSs, huh?
yeah.
So I'm so entrenched in the WordPress industry that I don't actually know all this stuff anymore.
Well, I think what happens a lot of companies. This is what I see with companies that have their own CMSs. At one point or another, they tried WordPress or they tried one of WordPress's competitors, and they did a poor job of trying it, right? So they went in and they did the typical thing that everybody does is they downloaded a bunch of free themes and a bunch of free plugins, and without really any understanding of how to best use those things together, they just jammed up a bunch of stuff and they got frustrated, and then they decided, well, we can make our own CMS. Um, and I noticed a similarity. There's oddly a similarity of people that don't use WordPress correctly, and then people that decide to write their own CMS. And it's not an inexperience with programming or anything like that. It's an inexperience with managing web properties. Because you could theoretically build a great CMS, but the person that built it could get fired or could relocate or could no longer be in the company for some reason. And then someone else has to come in and manage a code base.
You're creating a single point of failure.
Yeah, exactly. It's a single point of failure. And so I feel like, uh, you know, if you are using WordPress or another CMS and your inclination is to build your own system, I always tell clients to stop and ask yourself, is that really what you want to do? Like, because that's not going to be the answer to all your needs as much as you think. So I always tell clients like really think this through and ask yourself why is this not working on this other system. Uh, but anyways, yeah. So I mean, there are people out there that do that, and it's still a thing, and it still keeps me in business. Like I said, most of the big projects I do are not WordPress related, um, you know, because a lot of the best practices for SEO are kind of taken care of with WordPress out the gate already. You know.
So in that case, so for the people at home who are trying to differentiate different types of SEO work, being a technical SEO, give us a little bit of background on what that means and why it is that you're helping to kind of triage issues rather than doing like long-term projects.
That's a good question. So SEO is typically split up into three categories. It is usually technical SEO, which is what I do, which kind of like encompasses all of the technical aspects of SEO, whether that be the markup, the internal linking, um, the page performance issues, all these different things that are technical related. And then there's content, which is all about developing the right content that users are interested in, and that should rank well in search engines. And then there's the backlink component, which is the links from other websites that point to your website. And so the technical component usually is sort of an afterthought for most websites. They don't think about technical SEO until either after the website's launched and built, or after they want to start ranking well, or after they've experienced a drop in rankings and traffic, and then they start to focus on technical. So my job as a an outside independent consultant usually is to come in and fix someone's technical SEO problem, or to get a existing website up to SEO best practices for technical SEO. So that's most of what my job entails, and a lot of my clients are. I do a lot of work with SaaS companies. I do a lot of work with. Lately, I've been doing a lot of work with e-commerce companies, some publishers, and I have a pretty good relationship with about two or three different agencies, digital marketing agencies, and I handle most of the technical SEO work for their clients. So I do work independently, but I'm sort of like uh, a fractional technical SEO for a couple different agencies. Um, but yeah, that's
Very
basically
cool.
it right there. That's you know.
That that speaks volumes, though. That means that if you're coming in to fix problems, or they're experiencing issues or downfall of their rankings or whatever, you're not seeing a lot of that with WordPress. That speaks a lot of volumes. But when you think about it from the, because this podcast is a lot about WordPress, when you think about it from that perspective, if you had a customer come to you and say like, "Hey, we're really struggling with our current host. We're on WordPress. Uh, you know, maybe it's performance, maybe it's security." And I think about SEO and the most important pieces of SEO from an infrastructure standpoint. Obviously, performance is hugely important, because if you're not serving it up quickly, you're not going to be continue to show up in results. Security is really important. I think a lot of times people forget that, but if your site gets blacklisted, if something malicious content ends up on it, Google's not going to send traffic to it, because they're not going to make their customers more vulnerable, or their searchers more vulnerable. But what is it that you start to think about when you choose a WordPress hosting company? What are the most important pieces of that puzzle?
So performance is a big thing because uh, for SEO, Google specifically has something called Core Web Vitals, which are uh, I think it's three or four metrics. I think it's four metrics now uh, that they are concerned with as it relates to performance. Um, and essentially, these metrics they judge things like one of them is largest contentful page, which is the largest HTML element um, above the fold on mobile. And then there's cumulative layout shift, which is when different parts of the page load in a delayed sequence, which shifts the layout of the page. And then there is, I can't remember the last one. It has to do with JavaScript load times, page interaction times. These core web vitals are specific metrics that you can actually get uh, for your site within uh, Google Search Console. So if you verify your website in Google Search Console, after the first month of verification, there is a page experience report inside Search Console, which will tell you how your site is performing for those core web vitals, those metrics are actually tied to Google's ranking algorithm. Now, how much of an influence those metrics have over your ranking has been a hotly debated topic since they first rolled out. When I always talk
Well,
clients,
Google's always been a black book with how much it
yeah,
wants to give you about what's in its algorithm.
exactly. But what I always tell clients with the core web vitals is that if your uh, users and customers are not complaining about performance issues, then it's probably not a huge issue because the core web vitals are uh, they are very strict and they want your site to be very very fast. And sometimes, like you'll see, you might have a really low core web vital score, but you yourself cannot tell that there's a problem at all. And so it's kind of hard to understand what's going on there. I always tell clients that Google uses core web vitals as a secondary factor, which means that if a page on your site is ranking alongside another page in the results, and everything is equal, you have the same around the same number of links, you have the same type of content, everything is kind of equal. Then they may then look at core web vitals as a tiebreaker to decide which page should rank higher. So that doesn't
Sure.
that means basically that these performance metrics are not the top priority for SEO, and they probably are not even within the top like 5 or 6 items. But it is something that you do need to focus on, and you do need to make sure that the site is just not slow. I mean, and this is just common sense for any, not even SEO, but to have higher conversion rates or anything that you're trying to execute on the site, it has to work well for your target audience. So performance is a big deal, and specifically for hosting, the big thing for that is the hosting company. When I tell clients is if you're using a WordPress host, they need to have the ability to support server cache or some sort of caching element. Um, and I know that some hosting environments they restrict certain cache plugins that users can use, and some of them have their own like built-in content delivery network for assets and stuff like that. Um, and they're all different. And the bottom line is they need to work. And uh, if possible, multiple layers of caching would be great. I always try to strive for some sort of database cache along with just page cache, because database cache is going to speed up your any updates to a site that you're making. If you have a site that you're updating often, the database cache will speed that up significantly. Um, and then obviously having for WordPress, having up to date PHP is always better too, because when PHP 8 rolled out, that really sped everything up for WordPress specifically. So keeping everything up to date and uh, having good cache, I think, is something that uh, for performance issues is something that a host can really help with. I think that's something that, especially if you're a managed host, keeping everything up to date and running smoothly, I think is a good component for performance. You know.
Yeah, it's funny. We had a couple episodes ago. We had someone come on and they mentioned. I think it was Oliver from PatchStack. He had mentioned this idea that if it's vital, it's required. And so when you think about managed hosting, you talked about caching, you talked about CDN. I think a big piece of that puzzle is the fact that even if you offer it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be turned on. And so when we think about the WordPress ecosystem, when we think about the wider internet and how accessible the internet is to everyone, you get a variety of user experiences. You get people who are, very experienced in building websites. They can write code. They can do all those things. But then the vast majority of users are typically people who are trying to run their own business, doing their own things. They don't have time to become a full-blown web designer, webmaster, all that stuff. And so they need these things to operate in a way that they can actually implement it. And so some of the things that we've done with WP Cloud, for example, is that like we have fully integrated CDN, we have fully integrated caching. They're not optional. There's stuff that is built in and it's made and fine tuned to use these very specific ingredients that we've built because we want to make sure that everyone's taking advantage of it. The other thing, and we've seen this with other managed hosting companies too, outside of WP Cloud, it is a core component of their offering is to make sure that these things are accessible. And a lot of the things that Automatic has built, like in the Jetpack plugin, for example, we offer like a free CDN, but it's a light switch feature. There's no configurations, it just works. And then it automatically resizes the image based on the requesting browser size, so that you're only serving the optimized image for that size. And I'm promoting all this stuff that we're working on, but it's important because the way in which we're building it is making it so that anyone can use it at any level, and then you're basically creating that layer, that foundation for performance, so that the rest of the components you can go focus on writing better content, asking people to link back to your site, things like that. And so you're buying time back for these customers who are trying to optimize their site. The other thing that WP Cloud does is that we serve everything through edge networks. We have 28 of them around the globe. Let me ask you this. How much of that is important to Google? Do they care about the distance, in the physical distance between a requester and the serving a file, or do they only kind of incorporate it from the perspective of performance?
They used to. They used to care about that more than they do now. Your IP address used to be something that Google cared about. Not anymore. Mostly because of what you're describing, of the popularity of edge networks, um, has really kind of drowned out uh, that requirement. But even that requirement was so specific and so granular when it did matter that I don't think it really mattered that much. Nowadays, even if you're not using a managed host, uh, a lot of people use Cloudflare and stuff like that, and so that kind of drowns everything out. It doesn't really seem to matter.
Yeah,
The physical, location of the box, it doesn't seem to matter that much anymore. You know,
right.
and in fact, I kind of think that that's a good thing. Like, I think we should be at a point now where, in my opinion, everybody should be a part of some sort of edge, network uh, to serve faster. And if you think about this, sometimes I get really too philosophical, uh, but we are talking about WordPress here, so why not? Uh, but uh, but I kind of feel like if you really want to stick to the values of the open web, then kind of applying to that edge network kind of uh, backbone structure, I feel like is better because with an edge network like that, you're not going to be taking a, a preference over a location or your content and your technology is accessible to literally anyone at that point. So I kind of think that we should all be moving more in that direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it. You heard it here. Joe Hall is recommending WP Cloud's Edge Network.
Well, I just to be completely honest, I'm a huge fan of Cloudflare. I'm a Cloudflare fanboy, but that doesn't mean at the end of the day, most of these technologies are kind of a one for one. And I am a huge advocate for edge networking, edge computing. No matter who you use.
That's okay, Joe.
Yeah.
We'll just bleep that part
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
And
You can fix.
no, you know what? Cloudflare is great because no, but we talk about accessibility, right? Like the idea that Cloudflare is is another tool that is out there that exists in a way that makes it accessible to people to be able to speed up their site. And so that, that's a key component to it. So, we joke around because obviously I work for WP Cloud, but what's more important is that we're making the general WordPress ecosystem faster. That's the key there, because then we want people choosing WordPress more as a whole.
Well, I
All
think
right,
you
so
both are. Both of you guys are doing that. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. Joe, this is such a great conversation. I want to keep it going, but we do try to keep this podcast to like shorter segments. So if it's all right, we're going to pause here and then we're going to break and then we're going to come back in another episode and continue this conversation.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.